New York Times has a story about a leak about classified information about memos that were written to justify the killing of al-Awlaki, who was a United States citizen. They say that he was working with al-Qaeda and he was in Yemen. And of course, we did a drone strike that killed him and another American citizen, which we considered collateral damage. And since they've been getting heat for that, the Obama administration basically leaks their version of events to the New York Times. Glenn Greenwald made a great point about this, and so did Marcy Wheeler. Bradley Manning leaked less classified information, and he was in solitary confinement for how many months? And he's still in prison. But the person who leaked this, well, that's leaking information that the Obama administration wants out there. So that guy's a hero. He's not a problem. They're not going to crack down on him. But when you look at what we find out from this, nobody looks like a hero. And the way that the government corrupts people who come inside of it, even with good intentions, is so demoralizing. It's a perfect example. So the Obama guys used the Cheney model. What they did was they took people who were the most ardent civil libertarians, they brought them inside the government, and they made them their Colin Powells. Remember how Cheney used Colin Powell to make the case for the Iraq War at the UN? Well, the Obama administration has used David Barron, Martin Lederman, and Harold Koh, who were some of the toughest critics of the Bush administration's abuse of civil liberties, and used them to do legal justifications for executing U.S. citizens without due process. Harold Koh defended it in public, and Lederman and Barron wrote the memos, and Barron signed off on the memo that justified the killing. And the memo is about 50 pages. Charlie Savage of the New York Times has got the source that indicates that. Now, here are some of the civil libertarians outside of the government who are disgusted by this. Jonathan Turley, he's a scholar at George Washington University Law School. He said, quote, "It's always more painful for civil libertarians to be stabbed in the back by a friend. There's a real feeling of the Ides of March that the Obama administration has enlisted civil libertarians to sort of do its dirty work." And then you go to Gene Healy, the Libertarian Cato Institute. He says, "If there were two people you wouldn't have expected to underwrite expansive new powers for the president, they would have been Harold Koh, who built his career arguing against imperial presidency, and Marty Lederman, who right up until the time he entered the Obama administration, repeatedly made the case against the Bush-era expansion of executive power. You take the people who you would least expect to do your dirty work, turn them into the people who write that dirty work, and then go, what? You see, there must not be any problems because I got Lederman and Koh and these other guys to sign off on it." It's a classic Cheney move. Well done, President Obama. A great change that you've been bringing us. So what do the memos talk about? Well, they have several different reasons for their legal justifications, but they had to overcome these legal hurdles. So one problem with executing a U.S. citizen abroad is that there's an executive order that bans assassinations. So, well, we can't do assassinations because there's an executive order. It's very clear. Except apparently the memo says, well, is it really an assassination when it's not a political leader, but it's someone we think is in the fight, kind of? By the way, these memos were written a year before al-Awlaki was actually killed. One of the main reasons that they say in the press, in the earlier reports, is, al-Awlaki helped to coordinate that bombing that was foiled of the cargo planes coming from British Airways to the U.S. But wait a minute, that was within the last year. So they didn't have that information at all when they wrote these memos. In fact, the memos don't even talk about any specific evidence. They just say, here's why you can legally kill someone like al-Awlaki, evidence or no evidence in reality, okay? Because they didn't have that evidence. And the only evidence they had, so-called evidence, connecting them to the Christmas Day bomber was that they think he might have been the guy on the opposite end of a phone call, but they're not really sure. Their evidence is, quote, patchy. And they executed this guy. And it was an assassination, and that memo is totally wrong about it not being an assassination. The second possible legal problem is that there's a federal statute that prohibits Americans from murdering other Americans abroad. Well, how do you get beyond that? Well, they say it's not really murder because he's a wartime enemy and we're in compliance with the laws of war. Is he really a wartime enemy? I don't know, kind of, okay? All right, there's another legal problem. The violation of international law because CIA officers are not uniformed soldiers in combat, right? Well, they say, that might be true, but on the other hand, are you sure the CIA fired it? And you might be in theoretical jeopardy, that CIA officer, if he was in Yemen and Yemen wanted to prosecute him, but Yemen probably will not want to prosecute him. So in other words, it is a violation of the law, but it'll never get enforced, so it's okay. But I want you to understand the irony of that one. Remember what the right wing told us? Oh, we can put these Taliban and al-Qaeda guys down in Guantanamo Bay because they weren't wearing uniforms. They're not complying with the international laws on war, so we can do anything we like to them. Now, when the CIA isn't wearing a uniform and they carry out an execution, oh, that's okay. They're never going to be caught in a court of law anyway, and Yemen wouldn't want to prosecute. Those laws are for them. They're not for us. And finally, I think the biggest problem is that the Fifth Amendment has a guarantee that the government may not deprive a person of life without due process of law. Now, that applies to U.S. citizens. Al-Awlaki, despite the fact that he was a propagandist for al-Qaeda, and of course we don't like him, of course we don't like the message that he put out, we think the message he put out is dangerous. There's no defense of the guy doing the right thing. That's not the issue. But he's a U.S. citizen. The question is, was he operationally involved in committing these crimes against us? We never presented any evidence. We didn't even indict him in absentia. So we didn't go to a court of law and say, here's the evidence we have against him. Whether he shows up or doesn't show up, whether we get a conviction or not conviction, we didn't even bother with that. We just said we have a secret memo that says that we can violate the Fifth Amendment with our secret evidence, neither of which we're going to show you. And this is the guy who was a constitutional law professor, Barack Obama, who told us that we were going to get change, and he said that the Bush was violating our civil liberties, and he was going to change that. Yeah, he did change it. He made it worse. Now we're not just doing indefinite detentions of U.S. citizens, as Bush did to Jose Padilla. We're doing execution of U.S. citizens without any due process of law. It, at the very least, is a clear violation of the Fifth Amendment.